When we imagine a mountain man, we see animal hides, steel, and gunpowder. But the real frontier was stranger than that image. Some of the items these men carried would surprise us today, not because they were extravagant, but because they reveal how fragile survival truly was. Behind the rifle and the traps were objects that tell a deeper story. 1. Castoreum, more valuable than gold. Castoreum was a secretion taken from the beaver's scent glands. It had a strong odor, and in the fur trade economy, it was extremely valuable. Used in perfumes and medicine in Europe, it increased the value of pelts. Mountain men carried small quantities to use as bait in traps. But here is the curious part. They transported these scent glands for months, across extreme cold and long distances. In some trading posts, castoreum was treated almost like currency. It was guarded carefully, not because it looked impressive, but because it represented income months into the future. 2. Medicinal herbs and frontier remedies. Frontier men carried small pouches filled with dried plants. Wild mint, yarrow, sage, sometimes ground bark. There were no doctors in the Rocky Mountains. Infections were common. Fever could kill. Minor wounds could become fatal. So they relied on knowledge acquired through experience or learned from native tribes. Some mixed bear fat with herbs to apply to wounds. Others used chewed tobacco to pack cuts as a crude antiseptic. They were not guaranteed cures, but they were something. And on the frontier, something was better than nothing. 3. Extra flints because sparks broke. Flintlock rifles depended on a small stone striking steel to create a spark. That stone wore down quickly. If it cracked or dulled in extreme cold, the rifle could fail. Experienced trappers carried spare flints, several of them. An object the size of a thumb could decide whether you ate that night. In severe cold, metal became brittle. Mechanisms stiffened. A man could have ammunition and powder, but without a functioning spark, he had nothing. It was a small object, but it carried enormous consequence. 4. Small trade goods for diplomacy. Mountain men often carried beads, ribbons, small metal tools or buttons, not for decoration but for negotiation. Encounters with native tribes were complex, sometimes peaceful, sometimes hostile, often uncertain. Small gifts could shift the tone of a meeting. A few beads, a mirror, a piece of bright cloth. These items weighed almost nothing, but they could prevent violence. On the frontier, diplomacy traveled in pockets. 5. Charcoal or marking tools. Some trappers carried charcoal or used burned wood to mark trees and rocks. They left signs, simple symbols indicating direction, danger, or supply locations. In deep winter, trails disappeared overnight. Snow erased footprints. Without markings, it was easy to walk in circles. These rudimentary signs were primitive navigation systems, temporary, vulnerable, but essential, and often the only proof that someone had passed through before. 6. Brain tanning mixtures. Yes, they sometimes carried animal brains. Not randomly, not as food. Brains were used in the leather tanning process. There was an old frontier saying, "Every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide." Brain matter, when mixed with water and worked into a hide, helps soften and preserve leather. For a mountain man, flexible leather meant better clothing, better moccasins, better insulation. Carrying preserved brain matter or prepared mixtures meant they could repair and treat hides even in remote camps. It sounds primitive, but it was chemistry in its earliest practical form. 7. Small pieces of salt, sometimes rarer than food. Salt was heavy, hard to transport, hard to find in the mountains, yet many trappers carried small amounts. Why? Because salt preserved meat. In winter, if you killed a large animal, you could not eat it all immediately. Without salt, much of it spoiled. Salt also prevented muscle cramps and weakness, crucial during extreme cold and heavy exertion. In isolated trapping regions, salt sometimes became more valuable than sugar. A small pouch of salt could extend your survival by weeks. 8. Personal tokens, locks of hair, small Bibles, letter fragments. Not everything in their packs was practical. Some men carried a small Bible, a scrap of a letter, a lock of hair from a wife or child. In documented journals, trappers occasionally mention reading the same letter repeatedly through winter. Isolation in the Rockies could last months. Mental endurance mattered. These objects weighed almost nothing, but emotionally they anchored a man to something beyond snow and silence. In long winters, memory was fuel. The frontier was not defined only by rifles and bravery. It was defined by details. Scent glands worth a fortune. Herbs carried with hope. Small stones to create sparks. Light objects for fragile peace. Dark marks against white snow. None of these appear in paintings. None of them look heroic, but they reveal the truth. Survival on the frontier was not just strength, it was foresight, adaptation, and the understanding that sometimes the smallest object in your pocket carried the greatest weight.